On April 14, 1912, 2,224 people went to sleep thinking they were safe. 1,517 of them never woke up. But that is not the real story. The real story is what happened before the ship ever left port. It is what some of the most powerful men in the world knew. And it is what 1,517 people died never knowing. This is the story of the Titanic that nobody told you. And once you know it, you cannot unknow it. The year is 1907. Two of the most powerful men in the world are having dinner. J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker in American history. That night they make a decision that will change the world. They will build the largest ship the world has ever seen. Not just a ship. A statement that Britain ruled the seas. That money conquered everything. That God himself could not sink this ship. The Titanic was not just the biggest ship ever built. It was the most luxurious vessel ever created by human hands. First-class passengers paid the equivalent of $100,000 for a single ticket, while third-class passengers slept 6 to a room in the bottom of the ship. On board were some of the richest people who ever lived. And then there was J.P. Morgan. The man who financed the Titanic was not on it when it sailed. He said he was ill. But he was not the only powerful man who did not sail. Milton Hershey, founder of the Hershey chocolate empire, canceled his ticket days before. Alfred Vanderbilt also canceled. 3 of the most powerful men in the world. All canceled. All at the last minute. Was it coincidence? To answer that, we need to understand what was really happening to the White Star Line. The White Star Line was in serious financial trouble. Their main competitor, Cunard, had launched 2 ships that made the Titanic look ordinary. The Titanic needed to succeed. Completely. Absolutely. At any cost. The ship was insured for $5 million. The equivalent of $150 million in today's money. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic left Southampton for the last time. The captain was Edward Smith, the most experienced ocean liner captain alive. This was supposed to be his final voyage before retirement. The ship received 6 iceberg warnings on April 14. Captain Smith read everyone, and then ordered the ship to maintain full speed. The White Star Line wanted to arrive in New York early, to make the newspapers. 11:40 p.m. April 14. Lookout Frederick Fleet spots something in the darkness. He picks up the telephone and says 3 words. Iceberg. Right ahead. The iceberg tore a 300-foot gash along the hull below the waterline. The ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, looked at the damage report and said one sentence. She is going to founder. He had built her. He knew exactly what that meant. The Titanic had enough lifeboats for only half the people on board. And most of them left only half full. The ship sank in 2 hours and 40 minutes. At 2:20 a.m. she was gone. But here is what nobody told you. The White Star Line was not just in financial trouble. They were on the edge of complete collapse. J.P. Morgan needed the Titanic insurance money desperately. But there was another problem. The Titanic had a sister ship. Her name was the Olympic. And she had already been damaged. In September 1911, the Olympic collided with HMS Hawke. The repair bills were enormous. The insurance claim was rejected. Some historians believe what happened next was no accident. The theory is this: the ships were secretly switched. The damaged Olympic would sail as Titanic, collect the insurance, and sink deliberately. The evidence that supports this theory is disturbing. The wreck at the bottom of the ocean shows the number 401. 401 was the construction number of the Olympic, not the Titanic. The captain knew the planned route passed through iceberg territory. The lifeboats were not loaded to capacity on purpose. If the ship sank with all passengers saved, there would be no insurance claim. But here is where the theory breaks down. J.P. Morgan had 84 personal artworks on board the Titanic, including priceless Renaissance bronzes and ancient artifacts. Would a man planning insurance fraud leave 84 priceless artworks on board? The inquiry found no evidence of deliberate sinking. But the inquiry also found the captain's actions were deeply negligent. He ignored 6 warnings. He maintained full speed. He knew the danger. 1,517 people paid for that decision with their lives. Among the dead were some of the wealthiest men who ever lived. Benjamin Guggenheim changed into his finest suit and said, "We're dressed to die like gentlemen." Isidor Straus refused to board a lifeboat before other men. His wife refused to leave him. She was heard to say, "Where you go, I will go. We have lived together so long." J.P. Morgan heard the news of the sinking from his hotel in France. His reaction was described by witnesses as surprisingly calm. He collected the full insurance payout of $5 million. And the White Star Line survived for another 22 years. Was J.P. Morgan a criminal genius? Or simply a lucky businessman? History has never given us a definitive answer. The truth, if there is one, lies 12,500 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic. Let us look at the evidence one more time. Carefully. The Olympic was launched first. She was the older sister. She looked almost identical to the Titanic in every way. After the Hawk collision, the Olympic needed months of repair. During those repairs, both ships were in the same shipyard at the same time, under the same roof, with the same workers, and the same management. Here is the physical evidence that researchers have found. The wreck has an extra porthole on the forward section. The Titanic never had that porthole. Olympic had that porthole. It was added during her refit. The counter-argument is that modifications were made to Titanic before sailing. The carpet in the wreck is the wrong color for the Titanic. It matches the Olympic's interior specifications exactly. Researchers have also found White Star Line documents that were altered after the sinking. Passenger list entries were changed, cargo manifests altered, official records modified. But mainstream historians reject the switch theory completely. Their argument, switching to massive ships would require thousands of workers to stay silent. In 100 years, not one worker ever came forward with evidence. The technical analysis also shows the wreck is consistent with Titanic's specifications. The truth is, we may never know for certain. The ocean does not give up its secrets easily. What we know for certain is this: 1,517 people died that night. Whether by accident, negligence, or something more sinister, they deserve better. Their story deserves to be told with honesty and with respect for the truth. And the questions that remain unanswered deserve to keep being asked. 706 people survived the sinking of the Titanic. But survival depended almost entirely on which deck you were on. Third-class passengers were kept below decks as the ship sank. Some survivors reported the gates were locked. Others said they were simply lost. What is certain is that only 25% of third-class passengers survived. The musicians kept playing until the very end. Wallace Hartley led his band playing until water reached their feet. Survivor Jack Thayer described the sound as the ship broke apart. He said the sound was like 1,000 tons of gravel being poured into a metal drum. In the lifeboat, survivors heard something they never forgot for the rest of their lives. The screaming of 1,500 people in freezing water, calling for help that never came. The lifeboats had room for 500 more people, but they did not return. Only one lifeboat returned to pull survivors from the water. Officer Harold Lowe pulled only 13 survivors from the water. Hundreds were already gone. The survivors who reached New York were told to stay silent. Some survivors changed their accounts after meeting with White Star Line lawyers. But enough survivors told the truth that history recorded what really happened. Their words survived, even when everything else was lost. 112 years have passed since that cold April night. The wreck has been sitting in darkness at the bottom of the ocean for all of them. The wreck is now disappearing. Scientists estimate it will be completely gone by 2030. When it is gone, every physical connection to that night will be gone forever. The questions will remain. The theories will remain. But the physical evidence will be gone. What we owe those 1,517 people is simple: we owe them the truth, whatever that truth may be. They were not statistics. They were people with names and families and futures. They had plans for when they reached New York. Plans they never got to make. Remember their names. Not just the ship. The ocean took them. But it cannot take their story. Now you know what they never wanted you to know. Share this story. Keep asking the questions. Because 1,517 people deserve to be more than just a famous disaster. They deserve to be remembered.